Hi, I'm Amy. Picture the sun rising on the pyramid in the jungle. The prisoner is led up to the top by guards to an altar where a priest dressed like a jaguar is waiting. While the prisoner is held up, the priest cuts open his chest and removes his still beating heart. Down below, the crowd goes wild. The priest offers the heart to the sun god, and the earth avoids destruction for another day. If that sounds like a nightmare, trust me, it's not. This scene was an everyday occurrence in the world of the Aztecs, and against 14th century civilization living in what is today Mexico. Who were these people? What did they believe? What was their society like? Listen as today's speakers explain more about the mysterious Aztec people.
The Aztecs last from the 14th century to the 16th century. The empire occupied in central Mexico.
This culture combines ethnic groups of the central Mexico, and the father of their culture is politics, which is also affected by the Colombia.
In the beginning, the Aztecs were a hunting tribe, but as their empire became more organized, they started to expand their empire.
But the way that they expanded their land was cruel. The ruthless warfare they done made many other aboriginals die by these wars.
During their region, the Aztecs developed farming, painting, animals, and even their own style of art.
One interesting fact is that they had their own encyclopedia made by others from the 1545 to 1576. And this book includes two languages, which is Latin and Mojave.
In the encyclopedia they made, which applies similar technologies from now. Some scientists even think that the empire affects our daily routines and habits. It's just like our ancestors who made this intelligent world.
The other fact of the Aztec is that they often work with European, Taoists, and even Spanish. And these are the most people who made the encyclopedia.
And because of Spanish, they have a kind of caste system, which includes corn farmers, nobles, civilians. Also, the nobles are usually Spanish.
Next, we will talk about how the Aztecs think by Spanish.
In just a month, the Spanish destroyed the capital city of the Aztecs, which the Spanish start a new colony called the New Spain.
In 1520, the Spanish attacked the Aztecs during an important festival. At this time, the Aztecs were still protecting Spanish and welcomed them as guests into the Aztecs empire. Although the Aztecs wanted to fight back, but they still couldn't match the superior technology of the Spanish.
For more on Aztec warfare, our next presenters will talk more about that.
After the Aztecs been collapsed, temples were destroyed, and most of the arts and culture melted down into coins.
Also, 50% of the Aztec population died because of the European disease, which was the Spanish purposely introduced.
After this disaster, we still couldn't know how the Aztecs did and what was their habit. Although we got half of the information, but there are still a lot of unsolved answers to truly destroy.
By the way, only 4 books remained after the Spanish burned all of them in the fire.
Once the Spanish conquered the Aztecs, they destroyed most of the culture. As a result, there are still a lot to learn about their culture and history. Much remains mysterious of the Aztecs. Thank you.
When explaining the success of the Aztecs, one subject comes up again and again: warfare. They were warlike people. In fact, many of their gods are fierce, bloody, and violent. The Aztecs were frequently at war with most of their neighbors. War was as much a part of their cultures as religion.
To start, the Aztecs went to war well equipped. For example, these are Aztec shields made of wood or raised cane. There are also some ornamental shields decorated with featherwork.
Here is an example of Aztec armor. It was made of cotton. That may not sound impressive, but the way they make it was by soaking it in salt water and then dry it in shade. This allowed the salt to crystallize and harden it.
This is a picture of an Aztec with spear. It has a broad head and is edged with sharp obsidian blades. Can you imagine getting hit by one?
This was the main stack weapon. The handle was made of wood, topped with wooden rock, coverable or spear. It was made to bash heads open. Messy, right?
The Aztec strategy for waging war was interesting. Attrition. The Aztec army were good at small-scale fights with their enemies. This was steadily wearing down until the enemy were ripe for eventual conquest.
The Aztecs seldom waged all-out war. Instead, they fought their enemies at low intensity. This allowed them to be busy on other things, like securing food sources.
As a result of war, there was a constant flow of war captives into the empire. Taking prisoners was part of the Aztecs' plan because their religion demanded it. Hundreds of thousands of victims were needed to sacrifice their gods.
So, we have seen how aggressive the Aztecs could be, but warriors just one part of their society, which was actually quite complex. Here to tell us more is our next presenter.
All advanced societies have one thing in common: a social hierarchy. That means society is made up of many social layers or classes of people. Imagine a pyramid, with most people on the bottom and rulers at the top. This was true of Aztec society too. At the very bottom of that social hierarchy were slaves.
Slaves served the noble and the emperor. They did important work like chores and gardening. There are two ways to become a slave. One was as a punishment for a crime, and the other way was that your family sold you to pay family debts. Contrary to what you might think, it was not shameful to be a slave.
Next on the social ladder were fishermen. They sold what they caught to earn money for their families. Similar to fishermen, farmers grew crops to feed the people of the empire. This group was important because they paid taxes, which helped to fund the government.
Next on the social pyramid were Aztec merchants. They lived in a different part of the city and had their own laws, gods, and temples. They also served as spies to the rulers to within their visits. On the same level of merchants were the artisans. They made work like fiddlework, jewelry, and drawings. Because religion was at the center of Aztec life, most artwork was made of religious nature.
Near to the top of Aztec society was the nobility. It held most of the political power and wealth, even though the emperor made final decisions. They made up about 10 to 15% of the population, sharing the same status as the nobility. the emperor in religious ceremonies.
At the top of Aztec society was the emperor. He had all of the power and could make major decisions regarding Aztec culture. The role of emperor was hereditary, meaning it passed through family lines. The person pictured here was the first emperor of the Aztecs. His time as an emperor was symbolic of the beginning of Mexico's road to independence from the Spanish. He worked to bring people of different cultures together and oppose starting destructive wars.
Finally, to maintain their civilization and complex social system, the Aztecs need a system of science and math to support it. This is where we hand it over to our next presenters to tell you more. Thanks.
Civilizations can progress unless they develop a system of science. The Aztecs were an advanced civilization. This was seen in their astronomy, math, and calendar system. First, the Aztecs were skilled astronomers. They tracked planets and stars, and were able to predict solar and lunar eclipses. Following those planets and stars was important for their religion as well. Besides noting the eclipses, the Aztecs would record the orbits without using telescope. For example, they could identify Mercury, Venus, and Saturn in the night sky. The Aztec calendar is really interesting. This is a picture of the sunstone. Aztec put a picture on the first ring. Each small picture means one day. There are 13 days a week, 20 weeks a year. How many days are there in a year? For example, 13 times 20 equals 260. It means there are 260 days in a year. How did they record the date? For example, if today is one alligator, tomorrow is 2 wings, 3 house, 4 lizards. It will continue until 13 weeks. The next day of 13 weeks, 1 jaguar and 2 eagles. It will continue until 20th week. In fact, it is similar to the Chinese zodiac.
The Aztecs had a unique math system. They used 20 as a base. As you can see, a dot in the middle means 1, and a bar means 5. A dot on top means 20. Also, when there is a dot on the top, the numbers use these bars and dots to show it. After looking at the pictures, we can see that a dot can be 1 or 20, and a bar is 5. When a number is bigger than 5, we should minus 5 to see how many dots to add on top of the bar. And it's same for 20. We should minus 20 and see if it's bigger than 5. If it is, minus 5 to see how many dots to add on top of the bar. Now let's look at 100. It's a line and 5 feathers on the right. They write it from the right to the left. 200 is a straight line in the middle and 5 feathers on the right and 5 on the left. The Aztecs use math for calendars, human sacrifice, representing fractional systems, and calculating the area of land. They already knew how to use numbers to do multiplication and division, and that was the way they estimated land area. Although the Aztecs had a standard unit of measurement, they can't use the measurement to calculate small distances. So, when they needed to figure this out, they would use fingers or bones to calculate the distance.
As for how the Aztecs applied math and science, our next presenters have more to say about that. Tim.
The Aztecs were impressive engineers. They built some amazing structures. Many of these are still standing today, such as some pyramids. Aztecs' homes were usually made of dirt and mud bricks. The main area was separated into 4 places. There was a place for families to live, a place where gods would be kept, a place to cook, and a place to eat. Usually, the homes for the middle classes has only a single room. Inhabitants, they do everything they needed in the space. For the upper classes, it has bigger houses and decorations related to the Aztec religion. These represented their wealth and high position.
The Aztecs used local and imported materials to construct their buildings. The most common materials were wood, local soil, and a special kind of sun-dried brick called the adobe. They also used an easy-to-cut and colorful volcanic stone called ensamble to build the base of the buildings. For the larger homes of the nobility, lime plaster on walls and floors. Other common materials included straw, stone, sand, and clay.
The Aztecs weren't spending time making human sacrifices to their bloodthirsty gods. They liked to entertain themselves to the Mesoamerican ball game. The amazing Aztec ball game was an ancient Mesoamerican ball game played by many people, including the Mayans. It wasn't just played for entertainment, but for political and religious reasons as well. The court is shaped like an eye. Around the court was a slope. The court was usually between 100 and 200 feet long, with a line in the middle and 6 marks along the sloping walls. At the middle court against the walls were 2 stone carvings decorated in animal pictures. Around the court were areas for spectators, nobles, and judges.
Religion was important to the Aztecs. Much of their building was built around it. It's no surprise then that they placed at the center of their capital city, Tenochtitlan, a temple for the worship of their gods. Built around 1325, Temple Mayor was used for worshipping the rain god and the war god. It was destroyed by the Spanish in 1521 and replaced with a church. It is rediscovered by electrical workers digging in 1978. In 1987, Mexico built a museum for the ancient objects they found. You can visit it if you want to learn more about the Aztecs. With so much building going on throughout the Aztec Empire, they surely got hungry. Did you ever wonder what kind of food they ate? Please welcome our next room to tell you more. Thanks.
How did such a big empire build itself? What did daily food look like?
Its status was like that of wheat for Westerns and rice for Asians. This was used to make cookies, tamales, polenta, and crepes. They also grew many types of corn, which varied in their color, taste, size, even yield. The Aztecs often mixed their food with chili and sauces or as fillings for tamales.
Other basic ingredients that used in Aztec food culture included beans, amaranth, and sage. These foods give Aztec a basic and healthy diet that offer essential vitamins and minerals.
As for drink, water, maize groves, and cocoa were common. Also, the Aztecs made different kinds of fine drink with honey, cacti, and fruit juice. Cocoa is a kind of liquor common people drink. The elite saw that the cocoa was drink for common people, so they avoided it. Instead, they preferred drink that made of cocoa beans, which they thought of as a luxury.
Protein was mostly a luxury for the Aztecs. In Aztec society, the higher a people's status, the more meat he usually ate. Sources of meat included insects, birds, fish, and their eggs. They also farmed dogs, ducks, and turkeys as food. In addition, they hunted some wild animals as food, like deer. But none of these are their main food. All kinds of mushrooms and fungi are on their menu too. Squash was another popular food. They eat its seeds, fresh, and roasted. Tomatoes, though different from today's, were put in with chili sauces or as filling with tamale.
One unusual fact about the Aztecs diet was the inclusion of human on the menu. Human flesh had a sacred meaning to the Aztecs, then because cannibalism was connected with Aztec mythology and religion. They believed that some god needed human sacrifice to maintain themselves in the world. If humans sacrificed their flesh, they would be purified and bring them closer to the god. Further, if warriors sacrificed themselves to the god, they were believed to have turned into a hummingbird or a butterfly in their afterlife. So that's what the Aztecs ate. But how did they record their recipes? They recreated a system of writing. Our next presenter will tell you more. Thanks.
For Aztec rulers, running such a complete society couldn't have been easy. They had to keep track of information and communicate across distances. For this work, they need a system of writing. The Aztecs didn't have an alphabet like English has. Instead, they used picture symbols with phonetic syllable signs. Together, this allowed the Aztecs to show the sounds of names of persons and places. The three pictures are Aztec phonetic syllable signs and their picture symbols. The first picture is Mapastepec, which means on the heel of the raccoon. The Ma syllable is the hand symbol, and the Ma symbol representing patch, and the Mapache syllable is the raccoon. The second picture is Mausoleum, it means a place of many deer. The third picture is Christian, or a place of lot of thorns. The two words both use the land syllable. The former uses the deer head symbol to represent Maza, and the latter uses the thorn to represent the syllable wheat. Painted art was something the Aztec was known for. Their painted art was drawn on animal skins, which was mostly deer hide. It was also drawn on cotton-based paper made from bark. Painted are ceramics and carved on wood and stone. Unfortunately, there are few Aztec paintings left. This is because most were burned by Spanish priests after their conquest in an attempt to erase Aztec culture.
Featherwork was an Aztec specialty. It was made of intricate and colorful kinds of feathers. Featherwork was used in garments as well as decoration in weaponry, weaponers, and warrior suits. There are two ways to reproduce this unique work. The first way is to tie the feather simply in place using agave core. For example, fences and headgear were made from this way. The second way is more difficult. It's a multi-type technique, which the Spaniards also call feather painting. These were done on feather shells and cocks for idols, because of the difficulty of preserving feathers. Fewer than 10 pieces of original Aztec featherwork pieces exist today. They were a shell, a fan, and a piece of headgear. The feathers were obtained from wild birds, as well as from turkeys and ducks. The finest crystal feathers came from Chiapas, Guatemala, and Honduras. One form of Aztec sculpture that has survived is sculpture. It ranged from the tiny to the gigantic. Sculpture was almost always of religious nature as a way to remind people of the importance of the gods. They were often intricately carved in style and appear on temples, the streets, and in people's houses. One of the most famous examples of Aztec sculpture is the sunstone. It is 98 centimeters across and weighs almost 25,000 kilograms. The sunstone was meant to show how the lives of people and the gods are tied together. As we mentioned, much of Aztec art reflects their religion. Next up, Karen and Anna will examine this in more detail. Thanks.
For the Aztecs, religion was very much a part of everyday life. For example, in towns and cities, religious imagery was displayed everywhere. Similarly, religious festivals were held often. The most famous even involved human sacrifice. The Aztecs worshipped over 200 gods. These were usually divided into 3 groups. The first group was God related to the sky or heavens. You may recognize the sunstone. The sunstone is maybe the most famous work of Aztec sculpture. It might look small, but this 500-year-old stone is actually 358 centimeters diameter and 98 centimeters thick. In the center is Tonatiuh, the Aztec god of the sun. He was responsible to providing warmth and fertility to people. However, he required a lot of human sacrifice to do his job. In fact, the Aztecs believed that if they didn't offer human sacrifices to their gods, the world will end. Scary.
The second group was made up of gods related to rain, fertility, and plenty. Tlaloc, for example, was the Aztec rain and storm god. His shrine was painted blue to represent water. The Aztecs sacrificed infants and children to these gods because they believed their tears were important to him. The third group had to do with war and sacrifice. The most famous of these gods was Huitzilopochtli, the father of the gods. According to Aztec legend, he is the god who told them to build their capital city on the lake. Aztec priests keep a shrine to him on top of the Temple Mayor, the major temple in the capital. The shrine was built out of skulls and painted red. Gross.
With so many gods, the Aztecs were often busy with festivals celebrating them. To honor Tlaloc, for example, the Aztecs held 3 festivals a year to encourage him to send rain. People created small hills in his honor because they believed that he lived on a mountain top. In June, the Aztecs held an 8-day festival to honor Salomon, the goddess of corn. During the celebration, Americans will carry green corn to the goddess' temple as an offering. On the final day, a slave girl was chosen and dressed up to look like the goddess. Then she was sacrificed in a ceremony.
Finally, in March, the Aztecs held a celebration of the war god Zacatec. Images of this god show him wearing human skin. So Aztec warriors will kill war captives and wear their skins. If that sounds bad, it was the custom to wear the skins for the entire 20 days of the festival. As you can see, the Aztec had some interesting beliefs.
Religion was very important to the Aztecs, although some of their practices are very cruel, but understanding them helps us understand the Aztecs.
Learning about Aztec religion may make their culture seem strange and very far away. But in fact, aspects of the culture are still with us today. Listen as our final group of presenters explains.
Hi, I'm Becca. Most people will agree that the Aztecs were fascinating people, but we think of them as being a part of the distant past. But what if I told you that they're still very much alive and with us today? Although the Aztec civilization collapsed centuries ago, parts of it still remain in Mexican culture today. In many ways, the Aztecs are still around. The Aztec culture is important to Mexico, and Mexicans are proud of their Aztec heritage. They see it as a precious treasure. Lots of Mexicans has Aztec lineage too. In the 19th century, the Mexican government began taking more of an interest in Aztec history. For example, they spend a lot of money on teaching and promoting Aztec culture. For example, they made posters, advertisements, and sponsored cultural events. So how has the ancient culture affected Mexico? Evidence of the Aztecs today can be seen in Mexican symbols and arts. For example, the Mexican national flag has an eagle, a snake, and a cactus on it. Eagles, snakes, and cactuses are traditional Aztec symbols. The story behind it goes like this. The Aztec war god told them they should build their capital wherever they saw an eagle eating a snake on a cactus. As it happens, they built their capital on the lake, which is Mexico City today.
Second, the language of Aztecs is still present in Mexico. Mexico Spanish includes a lot of Aztec words. For example, chili is an Aztec word for hot pepper. Nowadays, about 1.5 million people are still using Nahuatl, a traditional language of Aztecs. More than that, there are many Mexico places where names use Aztec names, like the capital Mexico City. Third, there are many books and movies are about Aztecs, such as the film by Mel Gibson. The legend of the Aztec is alive and well in Mexico. It's a source of much of Mexican tourism. Aztec's world attracts millions of tourists and contributes billions of dollars a year. For example, the most famous Aztec words are pyramids. There are more than 5 pyramid sites. The most famous of which is the Pyramid of the Sun. It attracts almost 15 million tourists a year. We also can see hints of the Aztecs in the special festival of Mexico, such as the Day of the Dead Festival. For this, people dress up as skeletons and walk on streets. The legacy of the Aztec isn't all great, however. In many ways, Aztec culture are built on war, violence, and death. Remnants of this code of death may still be seen today in Mexico's extremely high murder rate. And the worship of Santa Muerte and the Lady of Death. Thanks for listening.
Wow, it's amazing to think that the culture could be so bloody and so advanced. Fascinating. I would like to thank my fellow classmates for all their hard work on this project. They spent a lot of time and effort to make everything just right. Please join me in giving them a big round of applause. Thanks.
Okay, folks. The end. By the way, is that our final ending slide? Did we have an end slide? I thought we did.